I've tried to make this video multiple times, and unfortunately, I think I've been unsuccessful because the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I'm providing a listener with information that they haven't heard about or don't really know. So I'm going to try to explain what judo is to my best ability. All right. So, judo to me, I'm sure you guys know what judo is, and it's basically a martial art where people are throwing people and tripping people and using momentum. That's what most people kind of interpret judo is, right? Well, I've been training judo approximately like 6 months, more than likely less than that, and I'm learning under a buddy of mine who studied it for a lot longer than me. And what I find is really interesting is that part of the whole way of getting your opponent down to the ground, you're really just using your legs and your hips to do all the throws. Whereas in wrestling, you're really using your arms and your hand and your back and stuff, right? So it's really interesting. Another thing is that I want to be a good training partner, and when you do any of these throws, you basically throw people directly on the ground or you trip them. And I don't want to throw my opponent, my training partners to the ground too hard. And to me, it's I kind of feel like it's very unsafe to train at full speed. So I asked a buddy of mine, what is the best way that I can actually go about continuing to get better and doing it while training with my partners in a safe way. And he basically said it's a two-part dance, right? When you're training judo with somebody, because you're picking them up off the ground more than likely and slamming them on the ground, you're trying to do it with as much control as possible and technique, which keeps them safe. Plus, you're using less strength, okay? And on top of that, it's up to the person falling to learn how to fall correctly. And I'm not even sure if they do this in wrestling, but in judo, a large part of judo, because it's pretty much all takedowns, right? You are supposed to learn how to break fall. Break fall is the word that's used when you fall, when you land on your back, your side, your chest correctly in a safe way that you continue to do battle. And I think it's fascinating because there's no other martial art like it. But I think with it, when you combine jiu-jitsu, which is the ground fighting martial art, right? When you combine wrestling, which is the takedown martial art, and I would consider wrestling a martial art. It's like controlling the person's body, right? And getting them not just to the ground, but keeping them on the ground. That's very wrestling based, right? But using your arms to do it. And when you incorporate using your legs to do the takedowns, meaning you're literally lifting your leg across somebody's hips and then pulling them over your leg and tripping them or pulling them or flipping them down on the ground. That's judo. And when you combine all of them together, you become a kind of a badass, you know? And I think it's fascinating that in all these martial arts, especially judo, I mean, as far as the standing aspect goes, when you're using technique, a tiny girl could take a really, really big guy and do any of these moves with the correct technique. And that's part of my love. That's part of my passion and my interest in different martial arts, because when it's technique based and it's not strength based, okay, like boxing, you could take a guy that's like a world class boxer and clinch with him and take him to the ground. But once he's on the ground, you got to keep him on the ground. Now you went from judo, okay, to wrestling or jiu-jitsu maybe, right? And I just had such a fascination with this because it's so much fun and I'm getting so much out of it, and it's really increasing my athleticism and making me more unpredictable on my feet. And when I mix stuff up, it's so much fun. So I'm pretty sure this isn't going to reach out and speak to the people that haven't ever tried judo, but if if you want to learn takedowns, okay, I might even say realistically, start with judo, Because what's really interesting is there's a lot of people that wrestle all across America, right? Judo is a lot more popular, like internationally, like in Europe and Russia and stuff like that, right? Africa and whatever, so forth and so on. But the interesting thing is the people that I'm noticing now that are becoming like Division 1 national champions and stuff like that, even on the international level, right? Have a background in judo. So that pretty much means that this is like an additional tool that they're bringing to the game, so to speak, a whole other system that when they incorporate it with people into like, pushing into them, they use the momentum of that wrestler against them. And then they do their little suplexes, the judo guy does. And all these judo guys, one by one, are now entering like wrestling tournaments or MMA or whatever. And they are destroying everybody, you know? And these are guys that don't even have any wrestling experience. So it's really, really interesting because wrestling works because there's like an aggressiveness and tenacity and technique, right? There's speed and explosion, but you're constantly like going forward, okay? You're like pushing into somebody or you're relieving that pressure and taking it off, right? But whereas judo, they really need you to come into them. So an aggressor is basically a judo guy's preferred opponent because as they're pushing into them, that's when they can take that momentum and doing something with it. It's a lot harder doing judo when the person's backing away from you. But again, that's wrestling where you're going to charge into the person. So between having a martial art having to do with pulling and another martial art having to do with pushing, essentially, right? Most judo moves all have to do with pulling. Very, very few of them, if anything, have to do with pushing. But anyway, I'm very analytical, and when I've looked at all of this information, I just sort of notice these interesting concepts, which, again, just recapping for the random crazy individual that thinks that this is interesting. Wrestling, for the most part, is really a martial art about pushing also. And judo is a martial art which its main function has to do with a pulling concept. And all these wrestlers that keep pushing into these judo guys, they just keep getting picked up in the air and thrown around. It's amazing. It's fun to watch, and it takes a lot less time to become really, really good at judo than it does at wrestling. So if you get a background in judo and then you get into wrestling, or if you get a background in judo and then you do jiu-jitsu, it pairs together beautifully. Which also is very strange to me, if I can just say one more thing, because you would think that in jiu-jitsu, that being a more of like a background of a martial art that kind of starts in Asia, right? That you would also the first takedowns of jiu-jitsu that you would learn would be judo based, but they're not. It's weird. They're usually wrestling based. It makes no sense because if you follow like the lineage, right, you should actually be learning judo first on the feet, and then once it gets to the ground, okay, then it evolves to jiu-jitsu, but you don't. There's like a weird disconnect, and I was talking about that with a buddy of mine. It makes no sense, but just hear what I'm saying. If you're really interested in learning takedowns, wrestling is phenomenal. Can't take anything away from it. But if you get a background in judo first, I guarantee you, whenever you start doing wrestling, you're going to be 10 times better. I'm not saying throw away the wrestling, because wrestling is great when you're going into somebody. But if everybody learns how to go forward and only one guy learns how to go backward to do their moves, it will make you 10 times better. So that's my 2 cents on a layman's approach and thoughts towards judo. I hope you guys like this. This is not the conventional post, but I'm passionate about it. I love it. It's so much fun, and you should definitely give it a try. So anyway, without further ado, this has been Joel Dunn. Check me out. Peace.